Welcome to the second episode of the Blitz. My name is Nate Shook from your Saffron City FC team, coming from the Masters Battle League. I butchered that, horrible. And this is our second episode of our draft analysis for the Masters Battle League. We last time went over the West Division. It was a great division. We loved that division. They had a really good draft. And I mean like a really good draft, and I don't think any other draft is really going to compare to that. There are a couple teams in the East Division that had a really good draft as well. And we're going to get right into that as we start this draft analysis for our second episode of the Blitz. And we'll start out with my team, Saffron City SC. And this team I'm proud of. And I can give you a little bit of lowdown on why I have what I did. Now I talked mad trash like early on that McGearna is the best mod in the draft, and I still believe that it is with Soul Heart and Steel and Fairy with some insane stats. But I figured it might go earlier than it might go earlier in the draft. I had the third pick in the draft, and so my thing was Celesteela. It's something that I'm used to. It's got a lot of bulk, and so I decided, dude, slap Celesteela. You can run it as an offensive, like a really fast offensive threat with Autonomize. And then you can run it as a bulk, leech, seed, toxic set. There's a multitude of things that you can do with this thing that make it viable as a Z, especially as a first pick, and more importantly as a Z mod, as it learns a lot of coverage moves that people just don't know. And that's where I wanted. That's why I picked it up. Then I picked in Zygarde, Thundurus, Rotom, Infernape, Clefable, Lucario, Nidoking, Reuniclus, and Virizion, and Goodra. Now, one thing about this team, you'll notice that it has synergy in the fact that it has to protect Celesteela. So this thing has been surrounded by just protecting it, making sure that its biggest weakness to electric is protected. So with Zygarde and the Nidoking picks, they're immune to it, so we can be safe with it. But if that doesn't work and they're predicting that switching, well, I can always go into Thundurus, Therian form, who can eat up the Thunderbolt with Volt Absorb. And if I want to take a resisted hit and not take any damage from Ice, I can have a Rotom. And then if I need something to break it down, I have physical sweepers in Infernape and Lucario, and in Virizion, and then the special walls in Clefable, Reuniclus, and Goodra. And the reason why I asked Philip Shook from Cinnabar Island FC, so I wasn't given like a biased viewpoint, is the draft grade of A, because of the fact that there is synergy involved with how I planned the team out specifically and why I drafted what I drafted. I wanted Zapdos, but I figured the Garchomp pick was probably a better pickup. I mean, early on, and what it can do, as it can trap people with 1,000 waves and they hit people from above, and it's one check to Celesteela with 1,000 arrows. They can hit a ground move from up high. And so it's a way, and then Thundurus being one of its most scariest threats aside from a Tapu Koko. So I wanted to hit this one real hard, and I got that. It was really good. And our next team is actually the Lavender Tap team, and this team is also a really good team for a little bit. His pick in Magearna is massively good, and I still think that's the best pick of the draft. Hands down, next to Celesteela and Landorus. I think one of the better picks is Latios. In our previous episode, we talked about this. Latios went to Fuchsia City. That was a great pickup, but Magearna overall just absolutely destroys any of those dragon types and a lot of the Z mods in this league. So you had a great draft in Magearna, hits it off with Salamence, with Moxie, which ups your attack after a kill. Dude, it's something you don't want to sleep on. Salamence and Magearna pairing is huge. And then this is where it's good, but it starts to kind of dive off a little bit. You have Weavile, Raikou, Celebi, and Snorlax. And that core, you're trying to find an identity here. They have the Steel Fairy core and Steel Fairy and Dragon core in Magearna being both those, Steel and Fairy, which is resisting some of the super effective attacks because it is a Steel type. So, and then the poison issue with fairies is gone because it's Steel type. So you'll have ground and fire that can only be hit, and you have to have, in my opinion, a pure fire type. And I think other people in the league would agree, pure fire to really deal with that. And so that it's a threat. And so you see he's like a starting of a fire, like he wanted to go fire water. But that's what, just from talking with him, he wanted that fire water core, he wanted to focus on the cores, but mainly that Steel Fairy Dragon core. We went Weavile. Thing is scary. Thing is fast, and it hits like a truck with ice. and it'll destroy a lot of these upper mons in like with fighting or dark moves. It destroys Landorus, it destroys Heatran, it destroys Chiron if it has enough speed investment to OHKO it with a fighting move. It can destroy Ferrothorn with a fighting move, and the list keeps going. It won't be as effective as it drops down because it is frail, and that's where it's kind of a little iffy here. Because Celebi is not bad, and especially for utility purposes, but if that's your only kind of bulky-ish type of Pokemon, that's a problem. That's a problem. And the other bulky one is Raikou, but you usually run it as an Assault Vest. But he does fix this in Snorlax. So his top, what is it, top 5, top 6? The top 6 isn't bad. It isn't bad. But in comparison to every other team in the draft, it's a very weak team. Because you pick what you can use, and we know he can use these. We know he can. So he's still a threat. Like the Weavile, even for me, if I'm looking at it from my own perspective, I hate that thing. Cannot stand it. And Raikou puts a big pressure on me, especially when I have a lot of electric types. And Magearna is insane to deal with. So these are not mons to sleep on. But as we go past that, we look at the Steelix, especially Steelix, Stakataka, Dusknoir. Why? Why? And these things are physically huge tanks. But in regards to how it works with this team, I don't know. I don't get it. And it doesn't make any sense to me. And then Greninja was a good one for sweeping. Like you run a special or a physical. Oh, I bet you didn't know that. You run it with Rock Fighting Grass Knot. A couple other ones like that are really cute that will actually cause a bit of an issue with other teams. Dusknoir can actually be used to abuse the crud out of other teams and with statuses and stuff. So Dusknoir isn't bad. Just there were at that time better options to pick up, but he is a threat. There are not a lot of ghost types here, so being able to find an answer for that is going to be hard if we don't have a dark type or if you don't have a second type. And then if you miss and upon guessing correctly and on switching, Dusknoir will have a field day with your team. And then the last one, Alomomola, has the ability Healer, and these are 90% wish heals. So this is where he picks his draft up from a D to a C in just one letter grade. That Pokemon alone, despite its stats and kind of weird moveset, can wish past a boss. And so anyone who has an issue or who is assault vested, which I can tell you, Magearna, Raikou, if they're assault vested, this thing helps us out with survivability. So this Pokemon alone in Alomomola is insanely good. And this is why we give it, I think, a grade of C. Now, the team doesn't really have an identity, but the threats he's bringing in the top 6 of what he drafted are insane threats just by themselves. And though they might not have help in certain areas with one another, these standalone mons are insanely good. And then if you add the healing factor of Alomomola and the sweeping potential of Greninja, if left unchecked, is why it's a C. As we start seeing this, a lot of what we saw in the previous episode with the West Division isn't apparent here in the East, and that's a problem. Is that a lot of the bulk, a lot of this, like the strong synergistic teams, are not going to be found in the West, not going to be found in the East, but will be found in the West. Whereas the East will focus on, honestly, on single mons that will destroy your team or be just single standalone threats. And that leads us to our next team, which is the Vermilion City team with Justin Akine. And this one is really big. This team is huge. Again, like I said before, you have individuals that can just wreck shop in any situation. Garchomp was his first pick. It's one of his favorite ones aside from Haxorus as a dragon type. And then he picks up Zapdos, Chansey. Yeah, he picked up Como and Arcanine, and the reason why I'm saying these ones are kind of out of order is because Garchomp can be run defensively, Zapdos is mainly defensively, Chansey can be both special and defensively as a good softball wish passer, Sylveon is bulky and special in the department and can be a good wish passer, Como can be built bulky, you see it in his stat distributions, along with Arcanine and Empoleon and especially Spiritomb. The reason why this thing gets a B is because there is some sense of synergy. There is some sense of, here myself rocks, I have all the cores in Fire, Water, Grass. I have the Steel, Fairy, and... do I have Steel? Oh yeah, Steel, Fairy, and Dragon. And Sylveon, Garchomp, and Empoleon. And then Empoleon It's kind of like that middle, that glue that holds all together, with Arcanine, Superior, and Empoleon, with Spiritomb kind of being that kind of like disruptor. He has insane coverage for every typing in his draft. And this is the main reason why he is given the Bs, because with all these different types and different strategies with each mod on his team, though they might not have this huge like synergy, like this one thing they're good at, they all fill a specific role and are good by themselves. I mean, case in point, and this follows in with the mentality that the East has a lot of standalone mods that will kind of hold themselves like by themselves and just be good by themselves, whereas the West has a lot of mods that kind of mold together in these really interesting and good fashioned teams. Whereas East is like, this mon's solid, this mon's strong, I'm going to use it, and you can't stop me. And we see that with Justin a lot. Arcanine is no joke. Zapdos is no freaking joke. And if we're talking about in-division play, Zapdos and Arcanine are huge checks to Celesteela. What is Celesteela going to do with an Arcanine or a Zapdos staring it down? And you add a Chandelure. So for the division, Justin has put himself in a really good position in the division to make it to playoffs, and his team isn't bad. It can do a multitude of things with good coverage in Chandelure and an ability in Superior that can catch people off guard, and a fast as heck Stealth Rocker and an Azelf that can be a potential setup sweeper with nasty plot. On the special side, we haven't even talked about the physical aspects of Garchomp or Como-O, which by the way is a sleep pick. It's slow, but again, it has the setup potential to just wreck your face. So that's why we got Justin here, A, B. It's a really solid team. Again, it's going to be interesting to see what he wants to do with it, because again, the identity is kind of up in the air. But again, each Mon as a standalone Pokemon is devastatingly good. And again, he hits almost every typing, and it is probably one of the most all-around teams in regards to typing and type coverage. Just going to throw that out there. Is it the best team in the draft? No. By all means, it's not. It is not the best team in the draft. And but he set out what he wanted to do, and he got every Mon he wanted. And if he didn't, he made the adjustments needed to get what he wanted. And I'll be real honest, that Sylveon, though it went real high, and even Chandelure, which was really high, the Sylveon pick was glorious, because I know for me, I was looking for it, but it has really good moves as a cleric and as a way to make your team a little bit more fatter than before. And that's what this team can be the most defensively bulky team, especially in the East. It will be probably the biggest bulk besides another team, which we'll get to, and maybe one of the better, bulkier teams in the actual league itself. Which leads us to our next team in Celadon City FC, where their coach is actually Kaylee Rutledge. Now, that D's bad. This draft was not that great at a certain point. The first half of her draft, absolute fire. You have Kieran Black, Suicune, Jirachi, Alakazam, Volcarona, and then Umbreon. Her first 6 is so scary to deal with. Not only are you incredibly fast in Kieran Black and Alakazam, but you have such huge bulk with Suicune and Jirachi and Umbreon. And you can make Volcarona either bulky, or you can quiver dance the thing and make it so fast and hit so hard. That is a scary team. The issue is she went with more of an evolution team at the very end, with Espeon, Vaporeon, Leafeon, Jolteon, and Flareon. And though Espeon gets Magic Bounce, and though Vaporeon is just a bulky water type, Leafeon, Jolteon, and Flareon really don't fit that mold well. There's no synergy in that except for the typing aspect, but again, with coverage, it's just not really going to do anything. And then you got 3 Psychic types, and it's a team that will not be strong. And so she needs to go into waivers. I know she talked about going into waivers after the draft, but this is not a strong showing from Kaylee. The first part was amazing, and there's, knowing her though, this evolution team can be absolutely devastating, and I would not put it past her to wreck shop with people. But remember, on paper, taking the whole trainer thing out of it, on paper, an evolution team in a draft format is not going to be something you're going to look for. But if she makes minor adjustments, this team is going to be the most devastating team in the in the East. I'm predicting that. I'm saying that this will probably be one of the more interesting, but also potentially more devastating teams if you make the necessary changes in your lineup. If you don't, I don't see this team going to playoffs. And I was looking for more in the evolution team. I know she was looking for Mew and she was looking for Gudra. Gudra was available, but she wanted to complete the evolution team when she hits like grade 4. And she's like, I'm committing to this. And then Mew was going to be her first pick, but got snatched up by Palatine on the west side. So as far as East goes, she's going to have a hard time getting out of the division. But again, if she makes the changes, this team is going to be insane. And honestly, even that draft grade of a D could go up to a C or a B, depending on what moves she makes in week to weeks with the waiver pickups or even trades. I know a lot of people who would be willing to trade a lot of these mons, a lot for them. Like I'm sure you'll find value in Jolteon, Espeon, Umbreon, and I would even say argue Volcarona. I wouldn't get rid of Alakazam, but this team needs a little bit of rework. So for those of you who are watching who are a part of the league, and for those of you who are fans, look to see Celadon make a lot of like moves in place to really repair kind of that draft day woes, because this team should have been good, and it just didn't hit the marks. But one team that did is Cerulean City Athletic Club. This is James Giles. Now this thing, I don't know what to expect. You have Scizor, Gliscor, Toxapex, Hydreigon, Tapu Fini, Porygon 2, Mienshao, Xurkitree, Gyarados, Starmie, and you made a Zmon in Salazzle. This is a team that is fat. And Salazzle being a Zmon means this thing is fast, it knows corrosion, it will toxic everything, and it will hit with stab, flamethrowers, fire blasts, gunk shots, and sludge waves. Salazzle is probably the scariest thing on this guy's team, but notice how each one works to get toxic onto someone, and then eliminates the possibility of any of them getting toxic with Tapu Fini. So James was very meticulous with this. I wouldn't be surprised if he looked for some trades, because if you looked at Mienshao, that's a questionable one. Starmie was probably the best rapid spinner in the game, aside from Excadrill maybe, and that was a value pick. Gliscor, Toxapex in the first 4 rounds within it, and then Scizor. Oh my gosh, Scizor 9, Toxapex 8. Okay, Gliscor is the next page over, but this is heat, man. This is straight bulk and heat, and we gave it a B. Again, I don't know a lot about these Pokemon on his team, but it is meant to be bulky. In an Eviolite Porygon 2 with Analytic, dude, that's not even fun to mess with. With Hydreigon, who is actually fast and has insane move coverage. Granted, you don't see a good Steel, Fairy, Dragon Core. There are going to be a lot of weaknesses. Thunderbolt is not appreciated in this. Any electric moves are not appreciated. You have Gliscor who can wall that out, but again, and you also have Xurkitree. But this team needs to really worry about more of the special side of stuff. Not because it can't handle it, but because their typing is so water-based, and it can be blown up in so many ways that it's gonna be hard. And he's gonna have to rely on his offensive threats in Salazzle, Mienshao, and Xurkitree to really put that offensive pressure. But knowing James, this guy he's methodical, he thinks it out, and this is going to be a wear and tear team where he's going to wear you down, and it's insanely bulky. And that Tapu Fini Toxapex duo with Scizor and Hydreigon. Oh, he does have the Steel Fairy and Dragon Core, and Scizor, wow. Hydreigon, Tapu Fini, and then he has a poison coverage for the Fairy type. So yeah, this team is, it gets a B. I think when you get beyond Porygon 2, it's kind of like, hey, what are you looking for? Because remember, Gyarados isn't Mega, and so trying to, well, where are you going with it, dude? Where are you going with it? And so it's very scary. Not sure I agree with the entirety of his draft decisions, but this team is scary. And if he makes a couple of moves in the very end part, like that Xurkitree's going to be nasty, Mienshao will be nasty. Gyarados is still nasty, even with the Intimidate. So he's got coverage to make sure, like, hey, you can't hit me defensively. So this team desperately needs an identity. I know James will give it its identity. Off face value, it's kind of like wonky, but this is a bulky, fat, special, and defensive team, which even Eric Pastor on record, who is the Fuchsia City FC coach, does not want to play this team. And he had the #1 overall grade in the entire draft, and is projected the #1 team for the entire league. And he doesn't want to play this team. So we give it a B, but it's a little bit of like a, it's a BA type thing. It can be interchangeable between the two because of how good James is with these types of teams. And that leads us to our last slide, which is the which is pretty much grading, like, okay, well, what team is actually good. And like I said, the east side is a little bit different. It's not as good as the west side, and so they are a little bit stacked. But this is kind of what we came up with in regards to grades and where they kind of align. Saffron is easily the best team going into it, and I'm not saying that to my own horn, but based off paper and draft, Saffron looks to be the most potent one, followed by Cerulean, because even though Justin might have a fantastic team in overall coverage, it doesn't have an answer for the bulk that's on Cerulean City. And then Lavender Town and Celadon, Lavender has a great first starting roster, so does Celadon, but it's the back 6 picks that it's just like, or back 5 picks, so it's just like, where are you going with it, dude? And so look for the draft sleeper to be James. Even though he's number 2 on the list, in the overall scope of the league, James is going to be probably the hardest hitter and the toughest one to take down. And I don't know if Saffron has the ability to do that. I know, and Vermilion's going to have a hard time with the mons he selected. Though they good overall coverage, cannot deal with that type of bulk because in and of themselves are bulky. So look to James to be the biggest draft sleeper, biggest team in probably the East. I would say that the top 3 fighting for it right now are going to be Saffron, Cerulean, and Vermilion. But I believe Cerulean, because of the trainer, we're now taking the trainer into account, Cerulean will probably take the title for the East and go into the playoffs with the number 1 seed from the East. Number 1 overall will be left to be decided. But that is our draft analysis for episode 2 of the Blitz, and we are so happy you're able to actually tune in with us and be able to experience that. It's an honor to be able to kind of work with you. This has been Nathaniel Shook, coach of your Saffron City team, and this is the Blitz. Join us next time when we talk about we'll be on again after week 1. We'll go over power rankings and the standings. This is Nathaniel signing out. You are watching the Blitz episode 2. We'll see you again. Take care, guys, and we will see you next time.